Okay, let's just dive right in. We are tackling a subject that honestly feels less like biology and more like ancient mythology. We're talking about the Leviathan that owned the oceans for millions of years,
We're talking about Megalodon.
the Megalodon.
Yeah.
And our mission here is to take the few fragments we have left.
Which are mostly its teeth.
Right, exactly. Just these terrifyingly huge teeth. And from those, try to piece together its life, its absolute reign, and then its incredibly sudden disappearance.
It's a huge puzzle, and this isn't just a story about a big fish. It's a story about a complete ecological collapse.
That's the real challenge, isn't it? Because when we talk about this creature, we're dealing with a submarine carnivore whose skeleton was, like all sharks, cartilage.
Which almost never fossilizes. It just, dissolves over time.
So we're left with this massive blind spot. Everything we think we know is basically an educated guess, built up piece by painstaking piece from its teeth.
Precisely. Those teeth are our map. They're made of calcium phosphate, so they're incredibly sturdy, and they are pretty much all we have to go on.
So let's start there, with that immediate kind of visceral shock of the scale. You look at a modern apex predator, maybe a huge great white.
A truly massive one.
Yeah, and its teeth top out at, what, 7 centimeters?
About that, yes.
But we have found megalodon teeth that are over 20 centimeters long.
It's a completely different league. It makes the great white seem, well, not so great in comparison.
And this is where the science gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
How do you get from a 20-centimeter tooth to an 18-meter shark?
Well, it's a form of modeling. We look at the data we can rely on, which is modern sharks. You take a great white, you measure its tooth crown height against its total body length, and you find a ratio.
A mathematical formula?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
A linear regression model. And then you apply that same ratio to the megalodon tooth. It's how paleontologists can, with a good degree of confidence, land on that size estimate.
That 18-meter figure, that's about 60 feet, right? The length of a bowling lane.
Or a school bus. It's a consensus figure, yes. It's a very strong, educated guess. Some estimates push it higher, maybe closer to 20 meters, depending on the tooth and the specific model.
But it's safe to say this was, without a doubt, the largest shark that ever lived.
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't just big, it was dominant for a monumental stretch of time.
It first shows up in the fossil record around 20 million years ago.
And that was a really dynamic time for the planet. New mammal species were emerging, you had kelp forests and grasslands developing. The world was changing.
And this thing ruled for 17 million years. That's an almost incomprehensible length of time.
It is. And it didn't just appear fully formed at that massive size. It grew over its reign, adapting. It actually reached its absolute maximum terrifying size right before it went extinct about 3 million years ago.
So if you were a large marine mammal back then, especially a fatty one, you were on the menu.
You were absolutely on the menu. The primary food source seems to have been whales.
And we know that for sure, not just a guess.
We have fossil confirmation. We found countless fossilized whale bones with these huge rake marks and puncture wounds in them.
Scars that could only have been made by one thing.
Exactly. The spacing, the size of the punctures, it all points to a megalodon jaw.
But we should be clear, these weren't the 100-foot blue whales we have today.
No, not at all. The ancient whales were generally smaller. A good example is a creature called piscobalena. It was about 5 meters long, maybe a little smaller than a modern orca.
Still a big meal.
A huge meal, but a manageable one for an 18-meter predator.
So how does an attack like that even happen? I'm picturing kind of ambush.
That's what the evidence suggests, a swift, incredibly violent attack from below and behind where the whale couldn't see it coming.
And the goal wasn't just to take a bite.
No, the goal was catastrophic trauma. They'd aim for the gut, the chest cavity, biting off a huge chunk of the abdomen to hit the vital organs. The idea was to cause such massive internal damage and blood loss that the prey died almost instantly.
A single, overwhelming killer bite.
And the power needed for that is, well, it's almost beyond comprehension. We're talking about one of the strongest bite forces in history. To put it in perspective, its jaw could open nearly 3 meters wide.
3 meters. You and I could stand up inside its mouth.
You could, yeah. You could swallow a small car whole.
Horrifying. Though I did read one small comfort, that they probably wouldn't have liked eating early humans.
Well, yes, the theory is we're just too bony. Not enough blubber compared to a nice fatty whale.
A small blessing. But to maintain a body that large The pressure on a young megalodon must have been just insane.
Intense. Let's talk about the nurseries.
Right, because we know they existed. We found fossil sites.
We have specific, shallow, probably warm coastal areas where they would give birth. And a baby megalodon wasn't, well, it wasn't a baby.
Not by our standards.
They were born at about 2 meters long, the size of a sea lion, already a formidable predator from day one. But they had to grow exponentially to reach that 18-meter adult size.
And they did it fast, right? Reaching full size by about age 25.
Which is an incredible growth rate. And it speaks to the pressures they faced.
Because the biggest threat to a baby megalodon was
Another baby megalodon.
cannibalism.
It's incredibly common in sharks. For a juvenile in that nursery, its own siblings would have been the easiest, most nutrient-dense meal available. It was a brutal filter. Only the biggest, fastest, most aggressive ones made it out.
So you have this unstoppable ecological machine. It's colossal, it grows fast, it's a specialized killer, and it rules the oceans for 17 million years.
Which brings us to the great paradox.
The end. How does a creature that successful just vanish? It had to be something huge, something global.
It wasn't a bigger fish, it was geology. It was physics. The evidence points to a massive environmental shift, kicked off by plate tectonics.
Specifically, the closing of a seaway in Central America.
The Isthmus of Panama. Before about 3 million years ago, there was a gap between North and South America, and warm water flowed freely between the Atlantic and Pacific.
And when that gap closed up, it acted like a giant plug.
It completely rerouted global ocean currents. Suddenly you have all this warm water being pushed up into the North Atlantic, which counterintuitively helped kickstart the formation of the northern ice sheets. The whole planet started to cool down.
And the tropical waters where Megalodon lived got colder.
Exactly. And that had this devastating knock-on effect all the way down the food chain. The colder water meant less krill and plankton in the tropics.
Which is the foundation of the whole system.
It is. So the whales, Megalodon's main food source, started to suffer. Some species went extinct. The survivors did the only thing they could do.
They moved.
They migrated, they followed the food to the colder, but now much richer, polar waters.
And that right there, that was Megalodon's fatal flaw.
That was it. Its massive size, its entire metabolism, was tied to warm tropical water. It was probably cold-blooded, or at least mostly dependent on external heat. It couldn't survive in the cold.
And it certainly couldn't breed there.
Probably not. The cold would have suppressed its metabolism, stunted the growth of its young. So as its food swam away to the poles, the megalodon was trapped in the cooling, emptying tropics.
It starved.
It essentially starved into oblivion. The king was dethroned by climate change.
And for the whales that survived,
Yeah.
this was the best day in their evolutionary history.
It really was. The moment Megalodon disappeared, the primary selection pressure on them vanished. For 17 million years, being big and slow was a death sentence.
You had to be nimble to escape.
Exactly. But now, that pressure was gone. Whales were suddenly free to evolve in a new direction.
They could get bigger?
They could get huge. Their bodies became these incredibly efficient factories for turning tiny crustaceans in cold water into massive reservoirs of blubber. There was no giant predator to punish them for it anymore.
And that's when we see the emergence of the true giants, like the blue whale.
Their incredible size is, in a very real way, a direct consequence of Megalodon's absence. The ecosystem was completely re-engineered.
And our fascination with this creature, or at least its teeth, goes back centuries, long before we knew what it was.
Oh, yes. Back in the 1600s, naturalists were finding these giant triangular stones, sometimes far inland. They had no context for them.
So they came up with myths?
They did. They called them glossopetrae, which means tongue stones. The common belief was that they were the fossilized tongues of ancient dragons or giant sea serpents.
I mean, you can see why they look like something from a fantasy world.
Absolutely. It wasn't until a naturalist named Nicholas Steno noticed how similar they were to modern shark teeth the penny dropped. He was the first to suggest they must have come from a giant ancient shark.
And that was a huge moment for paleontology. That idea eventually led to the official name in 1843.
Megalodon.
Big tooth.
Simple enough. And that fascination is still here. I mean, you can go online right now and buy a megalodon tooth.
You can. They're found all over the world, but the big ones, the really well-preserved 6 or 7 inch specimens, they can be worth thousands of dollars. It's a very tangible link to this deep, ancient past. Okay, so we have to ask the big question, the one that every movie is about. Could it still be out there, lurking in the deep?
It's a great thought, isn't it? The ultimate sea monster. But Scientifically, it's just not plausible.
Why not? The ocean's huge. We haven't explored all of it.
It's huge, but an animal with those kinds of metabolic needs, it would need to eat tens of thousands of pounds of food constantly. It couldn't just hang out in the deep, dark abyss.
You would have to come up to the surface waters to hunt the big whales.
Exactly. And an 18-meter-long predator hunting blue whales.
Hmm.
We would have seen it. We would have evidence. Fishing fleets, sonar, whale carcasses with giant bites. There would be a trace.
So the same reason it went extinct is the same reason it can't be alive today. Its food source isn't in the tropics anymore, and it can't survive in the cold.
That's the tragic irony. Its incredible size and specialization, the very things that made it so dominant, became its greatest weaknesses.
It was too big to adapt.
Its downfall wasn't a rival predator. It was an inability to cope when the world changed around it. The king of the ocean just couldn't keep up.
And that leaves us with a really provocative final thought. If the disappearance of this one single apex predator allowed whales to completely reshape their bodies and evolve into these blubber-rich giants, what smaller, more subtle pressures are at work right now? What unseen forces in our modern oceans are shaping the bodies and behaviors of the animals we see today? What massive changes could be brewing right now, deep down, getting ready to define the next evolutionary era? The ocean's always adapting. Something to think about.
A great place to leave it.
Until the next deep dive, we'll see you soon.